Hello, you're listening to An Artist's Happy Hour, a podcast produced by the AT&T Performing Arts Center. I'm your host, Matt Lyle. I spend an hour every week with one local artist and just absolutely pepper them with questions about how they make art. In this episode, I called another writer, Mike Federico. Recently, for Theater 3, he wrote Dracula, as well as the book for The Manufactured Myth of Evelyn Flynn. He also co-wrote Pompeii at Kitchen Dog Theater, as well as being the co-creator and writer of the book for the musical On the Eve. Mike is also a busy actor, but we mostly talk about his writing here. Now, without further ado, here is Mike Federico. Hello, Mike Federico. How the heck are you?
I'm good. How are you, Matt Lyle?
Pretty good. Are you staying in and staying healthy and sane at the same time?
Yeah, man. Yes, I'm staying in and staying healthy and staying somewhat sane, mostly sane. I have some nights where I think I'm going to lose it, but you know, that's par for the course. So
yeah. Oh yeah. What has changed, really?
Right.
Other than you're at home feeling that way.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to talk to you about playwriting. You're a great actor too, so we might venture into that if you ever feel like you want to relate those things. But
that.
You're a very funny playwright, as well as kind of cinematic in the way that you present things on stage. I've just always found it really interesting, and I don't know that we've ever really just sat and talked about it. So here we are.
Yeah, it's funny because I know. I mean, obviously we know each other, and I mean I've been in a show of yours, and I'm a big fan of yours, and yeah, we normally talk about baseball or something else.
Yes, I normally talk about baseball with most people that I know. But it is nice to talk about the thing that we both do. So, what was the first play that you wrote?
The first play I remember writing was for an 8th grade U.S. history project.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote a short, powerful play about the Civil War.
Oh, you knew a lot about the Civil War too.
Yeah, because yes, exactly. Whatever the 1 week we had spent on it in 8th grade. And I remember, I for some reason will never forget. I will never forget this. I wrote, it's like a Union soldier and a Southern soldier meet each other in the woods, and they have this very long talk. And then at the end, one of them kills the other one or something. And I remember my 8th grade teacher giving me a C because it was, quote, unrealistic.
Wait, what was did she explain what was unrealistic about it?
No, that was it.
And also, like, isn't it okay for something to not be realistic?
Yeah, I was like, that kind of sums up my work even now. So
yeah. Again, nothing has changed for you. When did you then consider yourself a playwright for the first time? So 8th grade, and then I assume it was sometime later that you...
Yeah, I think I was in college when I was at SMU. After your sophomore year, we sort of split into 2 groups, which they called acting track and theater studies. They still do that. And I was a theater studies kid, and playwriting very quickly became my main focus. I knew that I wanted to write and had already written a couple things in school. And so I think when I was studying playwriting, I was very much like, I'm a playwright, man. But it was actually much later, probably after I did On the Eve. I mean, and I had written other things and had things produced, but I think once On the Eve had a couple productions and kind of did, I got to go different places with it and stuff. I think I finally felt comfortable saying, I am a playwright. I do this thing.
On the Eve, just my perception, was really one of, for this sort of generation of theater artists in Dallas, it seemed like it was kind of a watershed moment in that everyone then realized, a play written here, created here by someone local can actually be a hit and can be beloved, and actually there's a level of excitement for it in the community that really transcends just a great play coming in from out of town, the New York play of the week. Or the one that's going around regional theaters. They're great plays, and they get around for usually a good reason. But it really seemed like On the Eve sort of opened a lot of eyes, or it was early on, and now I'd say it's a thing.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think definitely we were a part of that, and it came at a time when I think, like you said, there was an excitement in the city. I don't know that everybody realized it yet, or the people who are sort of in charge of making seasons and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
not to say theaters hadn't tried, but yeah, so it was cool. It was really exciting to be a part of that kind of moment in Dallas, and I mean, it was a great to get to work with, Jeffrey Schmidt and all,
Hmm.
I mean, every actor and everything. So yeah, I think after that it did feel like, okay, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you go through this, Matt, and I need to grow up sometimes, but sometimes I, still feel like a total fraud.
Yeah,
Um,
sure.
but I at least felt like, oh, I had done a couple things. That thing was like, yeah, I can say this and not be a liar,
Yeah, this is legit. I've done something good that
Yeah.
enough people like it besides me.
Besides me, right.
I find that I'm number one in liking my work or not liking my work. Uh,
Yeah.
if I like it, it usually means it's pretty good. If I don't like it, it usually means I should probably keep it in a drawer somewhere.
I think that's right. And I'm not someone who, even the plays that I've written that I'm happy with and that I like, I mean, I think there's always, of course there's always things you're like, ah, shit, I wish I had done that differently or figured this out differently.
Yeah.
But if I do finish something and I'm like, I hate this, yeah, I will just put it away.
Yeah. How many of those things do you think you have?
I have a few. Some are just like that I just don't like or I don't think
Yeah.
work. And then some, oddly, I've written a couple things that I think in the moment were relevant, and then because of some cultural shift or something, kind of became dated in a way,
Yeah.
if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Hmm.
Um, God, I think that's going to be a huge thing right now.
With the way the news cycles run, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, and just that this like crazy sort of insane experience that we're sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, I don't think I have a ton. It's not like,
Yeah.
I don't. I hate all these plays. But there are a
Yeah.
few where I have finished and be like, God, that was a lot of time and effort, and I really do not like this.
Yeah. 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 You said earlier at SMU you knew you wanted to be a writer. How did you know that you wanted to be a writer?
Oh man, I don't know. It was something really, even in, I mean, I know I wrote the stupid thing in eighth grade, but even in high school, it was something that I felt like I was drawn to, and I did write some things in high school. Even, I mean, I'm a huge movie fan, and I think, you said, I think a lot of cinematic, I think is what I
Yeah.
tend to even when I write plays.
Yeah.
But I found myself even at a relatively young age when I would go to movies, I was always drawn to sort of like the writing and structure of it, even maybe before the visual aspects of the film.
Hmm.
So I think, I don't know, it was just something I knew relatively young that I wanted to at least try.
How would you describe your work? You've been doing it for a while, and it's developed and become what it is now. How would you describe it to someone
So
who has never seen it?
I mean, I think cinematic is a good word. I do think there is one thing that that often happens in my work, even if it's not conscious. At least in plays that I write, not necessarily screenplays, but plays that I write, I often just sort of disregard the rules of space and time. And I don't mean that in like, I mean, I know On the Eve is about time travel. That's not what I mean. But I love the idea that you're like in Shakespeare terms, if I say we're in the forest of Arden, then we're in the forest of Arden.
Hmm.
Um, and I can step out of the forest of Arden just by saying it, so I like work. I think a lot of my plays, scenes bleed into each other. We can jump in time, and some of those rules I have fun breaking. I also love, as much as I love movies and the cinematic aspects of things, I love things that are just inherently theatrical, like
Hmm.
things that wouldn't work in any other form. So I love actors playing multiple roles. I don't know why, but I do.
Yeah.
And things like that. Like I really, really do enjoy that stuff.
Where do you generally get your ideas? That's the first thing anybody asks a writer. How did you think of that? Oh my God, how did you think of that? Like an actor, how did you memorize all of those lines?
Did you memorize all those lines?
Yeah, but that's sort of an insulting question for an actor. But where do you get your ideas is a question I find as a writer, and writers that I've asked is a question that you go, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I have no idea where my next idea is coming from.
It's so funny, man. I was watching this thing with David Lynch, and in all his weird David Lynchness, they asked him that question, and he's just talked about going fishing in the universe. And I was like, of course he can get away with saying that. I can't.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I think sometimes, if I were to like sit down, it's like maybe subconsciously from things that I've read or things that I've watched, things creep in, some things from my life, obviously. I try to be good. I don't always succeed. I try to be good about if there are sort of odd subjects that I'm interested in, even if I don't have an idea, if there's more of just like a subject that I'm interested in, to try to read up and learn stuff. And sometimes I think that'll spark an idea. And then sometimes I have no idea at all. And then this, other times someone hires you to write a thing and you're like, yes, I will write Dracula,
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's kind of, the idea is kind of at least halfway given to you.
Yeah, that does help, and deadlines help a good deal too.
Definitely.
I can write a play in 3 months if my deadline is 3 months.
Yeah.
I write a play in a year if I don't have a deadline at all, or a year and a half, or however
long it takes. Yeah, there is definitely something about. It's amazing how if you have a real deadline, how quickly you can work. If you really need to.
Absolutely. Now, about that, do you have a particular process to manage that discipline that it takes? That's sort of an aspiring writer listening to this would like to know, how do I sit down and finish something that's 115 pages long? Went for it. My discipline peters out right at full-length play.
Yeah, I've trying to write a novel forever, and it is, oh my God, it's such a different thing.
Completely.
Massive.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I try for a young writer who's, how do you do that? How do you make sure you finish it? Even if I don't have a deadline from a theater necessarily, like something you've been commissioned to write or whatever, I do try to at least give myself goals. Like, I would love to have Act 1 finished in this amount of time, and I try to make, I'm not saying I have a set schedule, like I'll write from 1 to 4 or 10 to 8 or whatever, but I do try to at least write almost every day, unless something crazy is going on in my life. I really do think it helps. Sometimes I'll even end up throwing something away, a day's worth of work away, but it will have given me an idea of what maybe that scene should be, if that, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I do try to find time, make time, I should say, to at least do something most days of the week. And I know not everyone can do that. And I know I have a schedule that allows me more time, because my other jobs are, adjunct at SMU, which is a couple days a week, and then doing commercials, occasionally. Yeah,
right.
So
for an audition.
Yeah, so like go and audition or whatever, and doing acting in theater. But so I know I have more time at home and stuff like that than a lot of people. But even if you don't have that, I do think you just sort of have to find the time or make the time. It's easy to let something go. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I find that if I say like, hey, even I'm just going to get something done on this today, even if it doesn't work and I have to rewrite it or whatever, that to me keeps me way more on track than I'll get back to it next Tuesday or next Thursday or something. That just might be my own attention span or something, because if I put something away too long, it can just kind of get away from me, get easier not to work on.
Way ahead of time? Do you plot the whole story out? Do you explore characters ahead of time, or do you have a general idea and you start writing? What's your deal?
I do try to do character stuff before just to give myself an idea of who and what I'm writing. Occasionally though, like I'll just have an idea for a scene. Like if I've had a thought like, oh, this might be an interesting play, and like some scene will sort of stick in my head and kind of keep playing out. And so sometimes I will just sit down and maybe write whatever that scene I've seen in my head is, sort of, and then even kind of go back and do some of the pre-work. I mean, I haven't written a ton of screenplays, but so like the horror movie that we were making before the world ended, I was much more
not connected. Those two things are not connected at all.
Sorry, yeah, not
making a horror movie in the world.
The world ending.
Yeah.
I was much more rigorous about really outlining the thing. That still things changed and came to me, and even. It's a sort of old school slasher. Who the killer ended up being actually kind of revealed itself to me in a weird way. But I still was like, with the screenplay, I was like, this needs to happen. You know, the very sort of generic formulaic stuff. Like, I need this to happen before page 15, or that kind was much, much more outlined and plotted than normally when I write a play.
Yeah. Yeah. A movie. There's a really set formula for movies that if you don't stick to it, it doesn't work structure-wise, where a play you can kind of play with. And
definitely. And I'm not, I know there are some filmmakers, go back to Lynch or someone, who can get away with just blowing up the formula, but I'm not that guy. I mean, I was like, we're actually going to make this. It's going to stick to the thing. You
need 3 acts, right?
Right.
Yes. Yeah. What makes a good play, in your opinion, and what do you think makes a bad play? This is taste, not just in like your work, but just kind of how you look at form.
So there are a couple things. Okay, man, damn, that's a good question. I think at the end of the day, what makes a good play for me is was I engaged in watching it? There are things that kind of make me crazy, that I guess I would say make a bad play, or things that bother me when I read plays or see shows. Is whatever the rules of your world are, in my opinion, need to be well established. That doesn't mean they have to adhere to the rules of our world, but the rules of the world of the play need to be set up and established. And if they're broken, it needs to be for a reason. There are sometimes the things that sort of throw me off when I'm watching a play is like, well, where the hell did this come from? This was not in any way, doesn't exist in the same world of the rest of this show, and the departure makes sense. Those are the things that kind of bother me, I guess, kind of get on my nerves about certain work.
Certain plays of mine. Yeah, I get you.
Well, Matt,
I get what you're saying.
No, one of your shows is a perfect example. Like, I thought the rules of Barbecue Apocalypse were so well set, and that world was so established that when things in Act 2 go crazy, it's completely believable, because it's still based in the world of these people. Even though Act 2 is very much in a lot of ways a departure from Act 1, right? Yeah. Yeah. But the groundwork was there, the world building was there, and so I think that to me is like, oh, that's really effective. Yeah. Well,
I appreciate. I'm glad I set you up for that compliment.
Yeah, man. Hey, man. You guys all need to buy Barbecue Apocalypse. You need to
read it. Buy it. Produce it.
Yeah.
Sometime after May or June.
We're allowed.
Hey, have you lost any work right now?
I'm in weird limbo. So I had co-wrote a play with Cameron Cobb that's supposed to go up in June at Kitchen Dog, and wrote a play with Erin Burdett. I don't know if you know Erin. She's awesome. For junior players, that's supposed to go up at around the same time. And I don't know if they're going to happen, and I think, it's no fault of anyone. I don't think the theaters know yet, and so
Yeah.
I'm sort of in limbo in both of those things. And then I'm supposed to be in a play this summer that also I think is in the same situation. Like, just don't know if it's actually going to happen.
Yeah, that's going around for sure.
Yeah.
I talked to Jonathan Norton, and he had Humana Festival that got canceled. It was like this big, I can't believe this is happening to me playwright moment, in a good way, turned into I can't believe this is happening to me playwright moment. Humana Festival is the biggest, for those listening, is the biggest like new play festival that, around the United States. If you want to be involved in, and it got canceled. The once in a lifetime chance he had it, but
I remember when I saw that was announced for Jonathan, I was like, oh my God, it's such a huge, and I mean, well warranted, as for him, such a huge. Oh God, I hope they bring these people back next year or something.
I hope so too. Yeah. Did you say what you think makes a good play?
Oh, this is such a lazy answer, but I mean, I just want to be engaged when I'm watching it, like
be entertained, or interested, or not bored.
Not bored. I think that's also a thing that makes a bad play. It's just fucking. Sorry, it's just boring.
It's easy to make a boring play.
Yeah.
Anybody that's seen a bunch of them, but good plays are so good, and boring plays are so interesting and make you feel so good afterwards.
Yeah, and it could be it sort of goes across genre or style. Like, I mean, I can sit and watch a sort of ridiculous, well-crafted farce, and I will have an amazing time. And then at the same time, I could watch a sort of two-person play that is slower and takes place in one room and, moves you to tears or makes you question your humanity. And that to me is equally like those. I can hold those things together,
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just a good play. And man, when it goes wrong, you kind of know.
Yeah. For sure. We're talking about what makes a good play, what makes a bad play, but what about the art form itself, or I guess the art form and the business, maybe? Do you have any ideas about what, if you were in charge of the entire thing, what would you change about the theater? And I guess on the other hand, also, the love and hate side of the coin, tell me what you love about it, about the theater, and then also what you would change if you had the power.
Oh, so the thing I really love about theater is I do, and I think this is kind of going to go hand in hand with how I would run the world. I still truly believe there are things that we can do on stage that only work on stage. And I for instance, is it okay if I mention other shows, right? Like,
oh, sure.
So I loved the Bippy Boppy Boo show. I absolutely loved it. That Danielle Giorgio and Justin Locklear put together. And I remember
it was at Theater 3 in the basement in October of this last year.
Yes, and it was sort of late night because they did it after Dracula. And I remember sitting in the theater probably around midnight or something, and just thinking to myself, like, there's no other form in which this exists. And I am laughing hysterically and sort of blown away by some of the simple kind of magic stagecraft and the dance and all of these different forms that if you were to explain to someone, you would probably be like, wait, what? And then you see it and it all works in its own sort of glorious way. And so I do, the thing I love about theater is that I think we can do things that don't work because it's a different form than film and television, and these we can get away with and accomplish these things that don't work in any other form. And so I guess some of the stuff that I don't know I would change if I could. And again, that's not to say all plays have to be that. I mean, I've seen two-person living room dramas that are brilliant, but I don't know that we've done a great job of showing or telling people that this truly is a unique experience. And I think a lot of times everyone kind of relies on, oh, well, it's live and there's nothing like live performance. And I get that. But I'm like, but it's also its own form, and it can combine forms in a way that other stuff necessarily can't. And I don't know that we've done a great job of reaching out to sort of non-theater people.
Yes, there you go.
And explaining or showing or telling or getting them excited, like you're gonna see something that you can't see anywhere else, and that your experience of it is gonna be different than if you came tomorrow night even. And so I don't have a solution. I'm not saying like I have the great answer to make that happen, but I think we come up short as an industry or as an art form sometimes in that regard. And I also think have decided who we want in the theater and decided that we don't want certain people in the theater, and I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I am right there with you on that.
Okay. Cool.
Yes, absolutely. Because is not a theater going public, but we need so many more of those people to come in if we're gonna survive or, God forbid, grow as the century goes on here. And entertainment is so easy. It's so accessible at home now, and it's good. Like TV is fantastic now.
Yeah.
If you know how to find it. And the movies have always been an easier version of theater. The work that an audience member has to do, the appeal that it has on a wide scale. There's just enough inside baseball theater, or for the regular theater goer to please what they're looking for. It becomes elitist in a way, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but just anybody coming in expecting this plot to move along, or this thing to be funny as well, or when they don't get that, they're like, they check right out, and maybe they don't come back to your theater.
Exactly, and again, it's not to say that every show needs to be a certain type of show, but I do think a lot of times we sort of write off audiences and have no desire to start a conversation with them, either entertain them, let alone try to start a conversation with them, if that makes sense. So we solved it, right? We fixed it.
We did it. Oh my gosh. Well, I'll see you later. I'll write a bunch of entertaining plays that'll get produced over the world. What are your feelings about the relationship between characters and writers? Because as an actor, it's very easy to turn off that connection between the two. Well, I'm acting. I'm just doing a job, right? I'm just presenting this writer's I'm putting an interpretation on this writer's ideas for this character. It's not me. I'm just putting on a mask. What do you feel about that same dynamic between a writer and a character?
It's impossible to, at least for me, I don't know, to not have some aspect of my life sort of seep into things. That's not to say like I'm just going to write about a writer sitting at home. But I think years ago, when I was in school, and I can't remember if it was my playwriting professor or a creative writing professor I had, one of the first sort of pieces of advice they gave was, the more specific you make a character, the more universal that character becomes. And so I do strive to sort of make specific choices with characters. And I think in some ways that starts to reveal sort of specificity about yourself, that you might realize like, oh man, I never realized this sort of thing in the world pissed me off so much, or I never realized that this thing was actually so important to me. So I do think you can, some things can be revealed. I also, I don't know if you I don't know if this has happened to you, but if you can get sort of attached to a particular character in your play, even if it's not the main character or the protagonist, sometimes like, oh man, I don't want that to happen to that character.
Interesting.
But then
they don't deserve that.
I try to fight against that.
Fictitious being who I've made up in this moment.
Yeah.
I can't hurt them like that.
Yeah, I try to fight against that. But yeah. I do think it I think it reveals stuff about yourself. I also think, and this is, I mean, as an actor, obviously there's a ton of work that goes into it. I don't want to undermine that process of, doing whatever you need to do to develop your character and memorize the lines and all of that stuff. But there are sometimes when I'm writing, like, there are things that I will just stay with me, like, and not in a bad way. Just like, I have to figure this out. I have to solve this puzzle. I have to crack this scene. And like, it will consume a lot more of my time and sort of mental capacity than if I'm in a show.
Yeah. There's more of you involved in the situation.
Yeah.
It's now, have you ever had a character who has to say things that, because as an audience member, people are looking for what the playwright is trying to tell you, I find a lot of the time. Or maybe that's as critics are watching it or as other artists are watching it, and maybe actual audience members that we were talking about earlier, like the general public trying to come see shows, they don't think about it this way. But if you have characters that are saying things, some of the things that the playwright believes, like you were talking about the characters who you really connect with, and I didn't realize I felt this way about this. But then you have these. But then you've got the other side too. You've got these characters who feel the exact opposite of how you feel, and if you give them enough dramatic weight, I find that there's like this juxtaposition in people's minds of like, well, the playwright feels all of these things in a way that we give an actor a break on it. We're like, well, no, I am telling the story, and I need a character to feel, unless I'm telegraphing how bad I think this character is, or how bad I think this idea or their excuse is, or whatever. That's a fascinating thing for me as a writer, is what my connection is to what the characters say and what the audience thinks that means about the work and thinks it means about me, and I don't know.
You. So yeah, no, I mean, I absolutely get that, and I think you're right. Unless you're specifically writing a caricature, right?
Here comes the bad guy.
Yeah,
woo!
Exactly.
His gun's in the air. Yeah.
In my mind, unless you're doing that stylistically as a choice, then you do want to. There are people in the world who are going to make those arguments that this character that you might completely disagree with is making. And some of those people, not all of them are walking stereotypes, right?
Absolutely.
And so that to me,
more interesting if they're not.
If they're not, exactly. Yeah. They're complex and all of those things. So I think I try to it's almost like you're presenting an argument, and you have to sort of allow yourself not to agree with that, obviously, but to sort of see what might lead a person, as messed up or different or whatever as it might be, what might lead a person to have those thoughts and ideas. I get that an audience might take away that you feel that, and I don't know that there's any way around that for some people, My hope is that most people would watch a play as a whole and say like, oh, the lesson from this or the theme of this clearly points to this person not being that guy,
Yeah. Now, how do you handle criticism in general?
I've gotten a lot better over the years. I think when I was younger.
It's not been that long.
Yeah, it hasn't been. Yeah, I'm very young, Matt. I think, as a young writer, when I was first sort of getting produced, it was easier to get defensive about the work, right? To be precious about the work. And I think as I've gotten older and have had the opportunity to work with some incredible directors, I'm far more open to criticism, especially during the process of producing the play.
Yeah.
It's, to me, you're working with someone who's really talented in their field, who wants the play to be the best that it can. That doesn't mean I accept everything a director says as being correct.
Right.
But I don't accept everything that I'm saying to be correct. It's to me that type of criticism is like, we're both in the room trying to make the play the best it can be. I also, and I think this came a little with age and experiences, and that's fine.
That is okay.
Yeah, that's okay. And I think that used to bother me more when I was younger. Now I just try to be, am I happy with the work? Do I feel like I did at least got close to what I wanted to accomplish? That to me is more important than if people, some people didn't like the show. That's fine.
Yeah. When you're leading up to opening night, what do you feel more of? Excitement or fear or what?
This is also, I think I've changed with age. I think if you asked Jeffrey about On the Eve, I think he was very close to murdering me, because I was just, I was nuts, and I was terrified and freaked out and doubtful.
This is the Theater 3, the version of On the Eve.
The Margot Jones version, the very first version.
Oh, the very first version. Yeah. And what year was that? Remind me. It was like 2008?
I think it was, oh man, I think it was 10. I'm not sure at all. It's what I was, it was many years ago, but that was it was a great experience, but I think, Jeffrey wanted to murder me. Now, I'm always nervous on opening night, just because it's such a weird thing to sit in the theater on opening night, and like watch this thing you wrote. But I also am generally now far more excited for people to see like what the director and designers and actors have done with the show, and I get excited about that kind of stuff now a lot more than I used to. It used to just kind of be abject terror.
Yeah. Well, once you've seen your stuff in front of audiences enough, you sort of start to trust. Like, okay, well, if I trust this at this level, then I think they'll be okay with it. Nobody's gonna burn me in effigy after this.
Sure.
They're gonna have a pretty decent time. So the fear does, the anxiety does, but that fear at first, there is nothing like that fear at first.
And there's nothing you can do. You just
And one of the aspects of that I find interesting is about writing is how vulnerable you truly are, putting your brain on a page for 100 pages and then having a bunch of people act it out and interpret it as best as they could and then put it in front of hundreds of people. If you're lucky, and it's like, here I am. If you'd like to know what's going on inside my head and how smart or dumb I am, or how right or wrong I am, or, you guys check me out. At some point,
this weird, crazy thought did go through my mind, and there it is. There it is, I am. It's a strange thing. It's also funny. I was doing, when they did Dracula at Theater 3 October, I did most of the talkbacks that they had for school groups and stuff. And one of the questions that always comes up, and the cast were part of it, which was awesome because they were a great cast. And one of the questions the kids almost always ask is, how long have you been working on this? And it's always funny to me to hear actors give the normal response, like, oh, well, got the script this time, and then we started rehearsal, and we rehearsed for 3 or 4 weeks, and now we've been running for a week. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, this has been 15 months of my life. And that's nothing. It's not. That's, the actors can only do what they do. That's their job. But it's always funny to me. It's like, it's 8 to 10 weeks or a couple months of your life. It's a year and a half or 2 years. On the Eve, was like multiple years of my life. And so it is. And then you're like, you watch it, and then someone's like, it was all right. And you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. like, you try it. Yeah, let me give you some blank pages and see what
go get them, kid.
Yeah, yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, after all that time, you just can't help but wrap your self-worth up in it in some way.
Yes.
After you've given so much of yourself and your energy to it.
Yeah, exactly. So much mental capacity spent on it.
Yeah. Well, man, I feel like we could go on all day, but maybe we shouldn't. I don't know.
Yeah, the people don't want that, Matt. Come on.
Nobody does. Yeah. No, man, it was a real pleasure to talk to you. I'll be hopefully talking to you in person again in the next couple of months. We'll see.
Yeah, definitely. It was great talking.